We've all lived through bizarro world for the last 4 years on many levels. And I think people are tired of bizarro world, and they're tired of a country that favors lifestyle over merit and hard work, that favors equality over equal opportunity. And I think we're sick and tired of watching our country and the things that made this country enviable to most of the world, our culture, be whitewashed right out from underneath us. The judicial system, the electoral system, the immigration system, the lawlessness, the wokeness. And it's a breath of fresh air. And I think that has also translated into the risk on trade, where, there's no reason to be defensive anymore. It's hope springs eternal, but that's misguided. And I think that's exactly what the bullion banks were counting on and hoping for. And use that opportunity to indeed flush out, the weak-handed money managers that drop the price down below the levels that trigger selling and selling and selling and selling, and they're covering. But to Craig's point, the debt, that's not going anywhere. In fact, it's obviously will probably get worse in a weaker dollar environment with low rates and a weak dollar. That's hugely inflationary. Inflation is coming. The loss of purchasing power is coming. And really what this translates into, which is somewhat concerning for a lot of the country, is again, like the Cantillon effect, the wealthy will get wealthier as their assets go higher in price, which ultimately will translate into price inflation as that trickles down into the economy. We've seen this playbook over and over and over again. And pivoting away from inflation or fighting inflation when they're 65% away from their target, when Trump is inheriting an economy where the numbers that he supposedly, or the book, the economics that he is inheriting are far from what we're being told. I mean, inflation is much higher than the 3.5% and that we're being told. Unemployment is much higher than the numbers that we're being told. The economy is in much worse shape. With what we saw happen in Lindsay, Oklahoma a few weeks ago, I find to be a kind of a red flag. And the fact that it's gotten virtually no attention whatsoever by the mainstream is absolutely crazy to me. And, Powell's talked about bank consolidations. I think the banks are massively over leveraged and undercapitalized, and watching rates on the back end go higher only hurts them more. But when the bank in Lindsay, Oklahoma failed, 50% of the uninsured deposits, they're gone. Boom, vanished. When Silicon Valley Bank failed and Signature Bank, they were all bailed out. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Oprah's money, Oprah Winfrey's money, the tech startup money, bailed out. This little podunk bank in Lindsay, Oklahoma fails, and only 7 million in uninsured deposits, only 50% are returned. The other 50%, I would argue, is the first bail-in this country's ever experienced since the legislation was written, and there's not a word of it on the mainstream. And I guess if I were going to play devil's advocate in all of this irrational exuberance, and I think some of it's justified, I do. I think it's time to be optimistic for getting our culture back, getting our country back. That's a good place to start. The financial side of things, we're a long way from fixing that. But if I were to throw out one concern, it's that if there really is a deep state, if things really are planned, my biggest concern is they're setting up for a fall. That you look at the BTFP, the Bank Term Funding Program, it's over. You look at the reverse repo market, it's almost down to zero. The liquidity is being yanked from the system right at a time when the banks are massively over leveraged and undercapitalized, and we should expect to see long-term rates continue to move higher. That's an unresolved problem. And so while I am very optimistic, and I think it is very optimistic ultimately in an inflationary world to expect metals to do well at some point after this sell-off commences and or finishes, I just think that it's also justifiable to be cautiously optimistic. The conference that Rob went to in Tennessee, when Trump spoke, it's interesting, directly following Trump was the senator from Wyoming, and her last name escapes me at the moment. Loomis, I believe. I think it's Senator Loomis from Wyoming, who came up and said that her idea is to revalue the gold held by the Federal Reserve on behalf of the Treasury to a level high enough to purchase Bitcoin with some of the proceeds. You can't make it up as well, in that all of the central bank balance sheets that hold gold have it in an account called the gold revaluation account. It's the name of it. The head of the Dutch National Bank has talked about this for quite some time, revaluing the price of gold. And, when you look at the amount of gold that has been accumulated throughout all of Europe and throughout the BRICS nations, it would certainly benefit the central banks. It would behoove all of them. Over my shoulder, you got Roosevelt there. In essence, that's what he did when he confiscated gold in 1933. He devalued the dollar by 40%, thereby revaluing the price of gold by 40%. It's something that is being noticed when you see a senator from Wyoming actually say that she wants to float a bill to do that. It is being noticed. You got Jim Rickards saying $27,000 an ounce gold by dividing the gold supposedly held at Fort Knox by M1. You got others that say other things. In a world where Bitcoin can be $100,000, no big deal. Why couldn't gold be revalued to $130,000 and thereby render our $36 trillion debt solvent, offset with the amount of gold that would more or less make that a wash? I guess it could. In theory, the Treasury says any country that wants to deliver their gold to the U.S. Treasury will pay them 130 grand an ounce. Okay. Isn't that what the price is? Yes, it's inflationary. Yes, it's going to have ramifications. But when you realize that we are entering that period of time, Rob alluded to the fact we're insolvent, approaching, I think we're at 120% or so of debt to GDP. Where I come from, those countries way back when, anything over 100% debt to GDP were considered banana republics. And those were usually the countries that had questions surrounding their electoral process, their judicial system, all of the things that have plagued this country. I mean, you could argue we have been toting the banana republic line for quite some time. To me, the common thread in all of it is a marriage between blockchain technology and gold and a new system, and to peg a new system that has lost all credibility to something that inspires credibility. Yes, I see it. It's right here on the blockchain. It's audited independently, continuously, and it's pegged to and backed by gold. The only way you make that work, and that it's interesting, the Swiss had a 40% gold backing way back when. That's the number that the BRICS nations have said in theory they chose. And I think that is something that would work. You put gold at a much, much higher level. You peg it to gold, put 40% gold backing or whatever it is, still gives you monetary latitude. And then Craig brings in Judy Shelton. I wonder if they will nominate her to one of the governor positions. She won't replace Powell anytime soon unless he steps down, as he has, I think, 2 years left. But she is an advocate for the gold standard, and more relevant to me, everyone talks about de-dollarization. Yeah, that's important, right? I mean, settlement currency, it's important. But to me, it's more along the lines of where's everyone putting their excess? And it used to go into treasuries. And the lack of demand for treasuries, to me, is the real problem. Who's going to finance our debt? Does it become hyperinflation as the Fed is the lender or the purchaser of last resort, or yield curve control, as Craig has talked about forever? These are all possibilities. What Judy says is, well, hey, look, no one of any intelligence would buy our treasuries of any duration. I think they're uninvestable right now, personally. She didn't say that. I'm saying that anything 10-year duration or higher is uninvestable. You're out of your damn mind to do it. But she says, well, we'll just have it redeemable in gold.